You've probably heard the term personal brand, but have you ever heard the term executive brand? Today, we're going to talk about what that is and why it matters now more than ever. My name is Tom, and I run the Executive Career Accelerator at Vertical Motion, where we help you find, land, and excel in your first or next executive role. So if that's interesting to you, be sure to follow me here on YouTube, or you can subscribe to follow me on Instagram at TomCoxVM. So with that, let's get into today where we're talking about your executive brand. Okay, so for executive brand, why it matters now more than ever and what is it? So let's define it first of all. So the definition of an executive brand is basically your leadership and management persona as perceived by others. So what does that mean? It means it's how people see you as a leader, as a manager, as an executive. It's how they think of you in those roles, right? So an executive brand is a version of a personal brand. And a personal brand is basically a 2D image that others have of you. It's how people think of you. You already are a brand, whether you like the idea of being branded or not, doesn't matter. And here's why. The reason is that we all subconsciously translate brands into a personality. If you think of like Apple, you have an idea in your mind of what that brand is in terms of a personality type. It's sophisticated. If you're not my son, it's a brand of electronics that you actually want to buy. He's a big Android follower. McDonald's has a brand. Coca-Cola has a brand. Nike, these are brands in the sense that you think of them, you imagine a personality or a persona. So for Nike, for example, you might imagine somebody who's very athletic or is a professional athlete, something like that. Coca-Cola, you imagine maybe the big white polar bears or Santa Claus or something like that, right? But we subconsciously translate people into brands as well. It helps us put people into buckets so that we can understand them more easily. So, for example, like a person might be a super great sales guy. You might think of someone as being super smart, or they're a software programmer. Like, whether you like it or not, this is how people are going to think of you. They're going to have generally a two-dimensional image of who you were the last time that they saw anything about you. Your executive brand is impacted by several things. So things that you do, how you communicate, what you wear, where you are in the world, your energy level, your ability to deal with trauma, your resilience, all these things kind of make up your personal brand, and then ultimately your executive brand. Your executive brand really is made up of the things about you as a person that people understand, and then they translate that into an executive role. How would you act in an executive situation, for example? Are you a leader? Are you a manager? I have lots of friends of mine who are like, great, that's all well and good, but I refuse to participate. I will not be a brand. I refuse to be branded is also a brand, just so you know. You can't not stop people from thinking about you in a two-dimensional way. All you can do is control how you're seen and take ownership of the signals that you're putting out there into the world. And if you're putting out into the world, I refuse to be branded, I refuse to participate in LinkedIn or online discussions, that too is a brand. Not a very good one, but it is a brand. So again, the idea of a brand is it's a two-dimensional representation of you. It's a static image in time of who you are as defined by someone who knows you. But you're not a 2D image, you're a 3D person. And so it's important to grow and change that static perception of you. You want to give people as much of a rich and deep perspective of who you are as a whole person when they're considering whether you would be a high-quality executive or not. So let's talk about, that's what an executive brand is, but let's talk about why this matters. So it's a numbers game, right? There's only so many executive roles that are out there, and you're looking for jobs that are at the top of the pyramid. So there's fewer positions available and just as many climbers. And if you think about it, like let's say that you're a great supply chain person for the space industry. There's maybe 1,000 roles out there that suit you, and there's 133 million workers in the United States alone. So, how do they find you out of those 133 million full-time U.S.-based workers, let alone the rest of the world as well? So the odds are not in your favor that you're going to be found for one of these executive roles. You have to stand out. You have to get your signal above the noise. Everybody else is the noise. You have to get your signal above all of that so that more people can notice you. Now, you want to be interesting to hiring executives, but you want to be authentically interesting. And so authenticity is something that I'm really big on in everything that I teach and everything that I talk about. It's really important that you be authentic to who you are. You don't have to become somebody you're not to become successful. And we'll talk more about that later. But understand that you have to be interesting to these executives in a way that when they meet you and get to know you, you're still that person, right? You need to be easily found, and people need to be able to understand who you are and what you are. When they look at your profile, they need to very quickly understand this is the kind of person you are, the kind of executive you are, the level of experience that you have, the things that are valuable or important to you. Your personal experiences are part of that too. So build your executive brand in a way that's very clear and succinct and simple to understand so that more people can carry your message throughout their own networks about who you are. And ultimately, you'll get your brand put in front of the right person to potentially reach out to you. So how do you turn your personal brand into an executive brand, right? The short answer is you just have to put yourself out there. You have to be out there online and in real life, not one or the other, but both. And I'll explain why in a moment. So let's talk about in real life first of all. So you put yourself out there in real life by going to social events with people in your industry. So lunches, coffee meetings, social events, maybe cocktails with a couple of coworkers, or meet up with some folks at a speaking engagement. You can talk about a topic that's important to you and then meet up with folks afterwards. Go to local business meetups. There's always some sort of local business meetup, at the county level or the city level. That's a great way to meet other executives in your area, and potentially businesses in your area that might be looking for someone like you. And also, of course, be going to your industry trade shows, conferences, and events and things like that. That's a great way to meet people in your industry. The thing about in real life networking is that you get about 10 times the fidelity of an online networking experience. So when you talk with someone in person, you are giving them 10 times the amount of interface and information and communication between the two of you that you would get through an online interaction, right? But it's much less of a reach. So you can only reach the people that are local to you. Even at a trade show, you're only going to see maybe 1,000 people. You're not going to see and talk to 100,000 people at a trade show. So it's like in real life networking, you get about 1/100th of the reach of online networking, but 10 times the fidelity and 10 times the level of communication that you would get online. That's why both are important. So how do you put yourself out there online? Well, as an executive or an aspiring executive, LinkedIn. It's the one and only network that matters. I don't care if you don't like LinkedIn or love LinkedIn. It doesn't matter, because that is where executive recruiters are trolling for their next executives. This is where executives go to hire other executives. This is just where people are found. There's a lot of noise and drama and stuff on a social network like LinkedIn, of course, but there's also a lot of people who are looking for people like you to put into their businesses. So how do you put yourself out there, quote unquote, on LinkedIn? Well, you have a complete and fully optimized profile full of keywords, and we'll talk more about how recruiters and executives use LinkedIn to find aspiring executives. You want to have posted blogs, updates about your network, maybe even a couple things about your personal life. You don't, it's not Facebook, so you don't have to put a ton of personal content up there. But, you know, like if you have a child graduating high school and you're very proud of them, that's perfectly fine to put up there. You know, if your softball team won the local championship, you know, think of things like that that are, you know, pretty innocuous, but give people a sense of a well-rounded version of yourself. I'll give you an example. So recently I went through leukemia, and for months and months, I didn't tell anyone on LinkedIn that I had gone through leukemia. I kept it, you know, pretty quiet. I was talking about it to friends of mine on like Facebook and Instagram, but I decided after about 3 months, I had been getting a lot of questions like, "Hey, haven't seen you around the industry. What's going on?" I decided to post something about leukemia, and that post got a ton of outreach. I think something like 10,000 people reached out to me and, you know, wished me well, and it was really special and touching. I just bring that up as an example of one of the reasons why you might want to put something personal out there. Um, it gives people, you know, a sense that you're a real person, not just a profile. You're not just the the jobs that you've had in your career. That there's more dimension to you. So be sure to be posting blogs, photos, updates on your life, comment on relevant topics and articles, and just share things that are interesting regarding your area of interest, your either your industry or your vocation in your industry. So if you're a marketing person, you know, talk about marketing things in your industry. So that's, again, you put yourself out there online as well as in real life. So just to kind of summarize, you are a 2D brand whether you like it or not. And I think the goal should be to build yourself into as much of a 3D image, of a well-rounded image of yourself. You can control your brand so that people see you the way that you want them to be seen. So think of this as just marketing, really, at the end of the day. The more you contribute to the marketing content, the more people will have a well-rounded understanding of who you are as a person. If you only post every 5 years, or if you only update LinkedIn when you change jobs and you don't put any information about what you do for work, they're not going to know who you are except for that one little bit of data. And it's just not enough to get a well-rounded perspective of an executive. So be sure to do this, because this is how you stand out in a crowd. This is how you get above the noise, right? And be doing this both online, yes, but also in real life. And so if you're one of the introverts that doesn't like to necessarily go out and network and hobnob with people, I hear you, I feel you, but it's still important that people get that face-to-face, in-person time with you, as well as seeing you online. So with that, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Leave some questions down in the comments, or you can connect with me at TomCoxVM on Instagram. And if you want to learn more about how to work with me, there's a link here below, vmleader.com/workwithtom. All right, with that, I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.